Hello and welcome back to a beautiful Thursday. The market is pumping. We love seeing some green. And well, that's just because there's a ton of bullish news coming from TradFi. There's also a little bit of wavering coming from the Brookings Institute. More on that. Let's dive right in. Bam! Now, I left everyone 2 episodes ago with the peak drama, which is this Hyperliquid USDC thing. And let me just do a quick recap of what followed up. So we had this giant debate, everyone coming out. Then there was some talk that maybe all of this was for naught and that an agreed partner had actually been chosen behind closed doors, that this entire governance proposal was for naught. Of course, in response to that, many of the validators came out and said, yo, we're running a validator. We have significant vote. No one's telling us who to vote for. Shut up or get out. So now at this point, we're getting close to the vote. Now, the votes are coming from the validators. A lot of people are actively moving their stake as validators signal for votes that they don't agree with. This is truly exciting. It's the crypto ownership democracy in action. And we do really hope that it can be as organic and real as possible, because if this works, it's working so well. And if it gets rug pulled behind closed doors, it's just less exciting. Now, the lead was always native markets. They proposed this coming out of the gate, and this just means this was a market that was native to the Hyper EVM from the team who's been building it. And they talked about 50% cash assistance to the Hyperliquid fund, which is the buyback mechanism, and 50% ecosystem growth. So like builder interfaces, Hyper EVM apps sharing the yield. I actually think that's really cool, and Athena's doing a lot of that. What I really want to focus on here, though, ecosystem integration and partnerships, because this is really just what's blown my mind from this whole thing. So deep Hyperliquid native ties through the founder Max Feld, who advises leading Hyper EVM apps. That's all right. But then we get Paxos that comes in here, and Paxos natively issued all these things: T-bills, repos, USDG, helped in segregated bankruptcy remote accounts. I mean, there's some cool anti-fragility there. We have shared revenue, but what they do here, and like this is where it gets nuts, they are promising that they will bring PayPal and Venmo, saying if you go with us, Hype and USDH will be traded on PayPal and Venmo. And to me, that is nuts. That is absolutely nuts. Previous partners being Binance, Kraken, Robinhood, OKX. I mean, that's pretty sick. Now, if you get into Athena, they had a great proposal. One of the crazy things I thought was bringing securitized and their ATS and traditional licenses to make a securities exchange on Hyperliquid. If you could basically make Hyperliquid competitive with the S&P and the NASDAQ, pretty nuts. Of course, we see coalition of partners coming from Agora with Layer 0. A few people have Layer 0 in there. Obviously, Sky, the decentralized version, talking about deploying the entire balance sheet, which is quite tremendous, to say, hey, we can give you an $8 billion liquidity infusion. Remember, markets run on liquidity. This is hugely valuable. And of course, we see a couple others. You know, you got Curve, you got Open Eden, you got BitGo, a major custodian. And remember, Fireblocks, a BitGo competitor, is releasing their own stablecoin. So BitGo has a lot of reasons to come out here. But what is fascinating to me about this proposal is that out of nowhere, we're seeing things like PayPal, like Venmo, like getting access to BlackRock BitL, like getting all of this coin in liquidity. But I've been talking about one major problem in crypto for a very long time, which is that last mile, that point of sales problem, which is simply that crypto and payments don't work very well because our crypto and all of our stables are limited to the wallets, the crypto wallets. Now, of course, I did my unboxing video for Seeker, and the Seeker very much merges the wallet with the phone. So if we're just assuming that we can do tap to pay with Google, with Apple Pay, or with any sort of phone, having a wallet inside your phone and making that seamless, very positive. But the reality being that we still need those partnerships to make this problem go away, right? To be able to tap to pay with stablecoins. And this is something that I think is huge. I do believe that making that seamless will unlock a lot of utility and actual payments occurring on chain. So in this crazy explosion from Hyperliquid, I mean, I would not have pegged them as the entity that solves this issue. Again, this last mile, this point of sales. But if we have Venmo, if we have PayPal, I mean, you're starting to get these big rails. Now, of course, native markets comes with infra through Bridge, which is a Stripe company. So we're obviously looking at Tempo coming in here, which kind of circles it all back. We're getting very, very close to these stable coins also having the point of sales element. And once that happens, there will be much less friction in the crypto spending experience, which will make crypto a sure win for wanting to spend. Why would I not have my stable coins deployed in things that generate really healthy yield, and especially add AI on top of that. Hey, AI agent, I have $100 in my account. I only want to spend 30 of it this week. Can you make sure that the rest of it is locked up, generating maximum yield? I don't care if you loop, take all the risk you want. This is how we're going to be interacting through our natural user interfaces. And let's keep in mind, Meta has Ray-Bans with AI right in the glasses. Apple just came out with new Airphones that do a lot of AI, that do a lot of translation. All of our devices are going to have prompt capabilities to our AI agents. The AI agents will manage the accounts, so on and so forth. So this is all very exciting to me. Now let's take a look at some other really bullish news. A lot of the stablecoin proposals to Hyperliquid came off the back of BlackRock's BitGo fund, right? That you could actually tokenize a stablecoin that's tapping into this fund, all of this deep liquidity around short-term assets with some yield. Very exciting. So BlackRock now coming out saying, hey, they plan to tokenize the ETFs following its blockbuster Bitcoin ETF. And this is BlackRock's iBit. Now, why would you want to tokenize it? This is really this slow merge, this flirtation between traditional finance and these assets. At present, a lot of people that want Bitcoin exposure are looking at the cryptocurrency markets. They are on 24/7, 365. They can trade, they can do perpetuals, they can open up to DeFi lending and collateralization and all of this fun stuff. The ETFs are a proven hit. The BlackRock iBit fund has been up and to the right. It's been a wild success, but it is still limited to the parameters by the markets on which it trades. So in a nutshell, what this really is like a funny backwardation into this new technology platform, which is that if their plan goes through, it means its ETFs, which trade only during limited hours on weekdays, will be available for 24/7 trading across the globe. This is an interesting concept to them. First and foremost will be the always on markets, the tradability at any time of the day. But as we've seen with their BitGo fund, the more you integrate this flow of capital from traditional finance and all of that liquidity in, if we can bring that on chain, then we can start to connect the dots, and things like Athena can build new novel protocols on top, and we can just see that yield can come out of these traditional dollars that are going into these ETFs. So very, very cool. Now, another huge announcement is Ford, and this is coming from Mark Antonio, the head of DeFi at Galaxy. So now Galaxy is announcing we are building the apex predator of Solana DATs, digital asset treasuries. They call it Ford. Remember, we've talked about this previously. This is position with Jump, a high-frequency trading firm that was very much involved in FTX, and they are major builders of Solana infrastructure. Jump is Multicoin Capital, major venture capital firm that's big backers of Solana with Kyle Samani, their managing partner, as chairman. And of course, it's going to list on NASDAQ. But one thing that is crazy is that this is the largest pipe transaction in history, a $1.65 billion investment in Forward Industries. And recall, none of this is locked tokens. None of this is SOL in kind. That means this is all new money, $1.6 billion of fresh liquidity coming into this asset, which they will use to buy Solana. So if you want to make a simple bet, an easy bet, it seems like Solana longing is pretty risk off. Now, that being said, consensus is always the enemy of a good trade, so who the fuck knows? But $1.6 billion is a lot of money. So pretty exciting stuff, moving us forward into that DAT world. Now, one thing that I found very interesting is that the Brookings Institute comes out here and they are crying wolf about things in crypto. And they come out with cryptocurrency as an asset masquerading as a payment instrument. Now, this is ridiculous because cryptocurrency is based on a blockchain. Blockchain is a publicly shared ledger of assets. So let's just say a ledger of assets is an asset masquerading as a payment instrument. Like, there's just fundamental misunderstandings here, and it's absolutely insane. And their big complaint, and this is what we're seeing from the banks that are kind of, again, fearful of the capabilities here, is that the Genius Act does not allow for yield sharing. Now, they're saying, well, people are getting around that. Coinbase is marketing this 4% one yield as rewards, that just by changing the word from yield to rewards, they're getting around this. And they go on this whole fear-mongering campaign that this is a loophole, that all of this is crazy, that, crypto exchanges have none of the guardrails of traditional finance, as FTX demonstrated when it took customer assets to speculate and collapsed. But remember what Genius says, that we can only get stablecoins from issuers that are directly connected to the Fed, the Federal Reserve. They have to be banking issuers. They are subject to major government oversight, and they are only allowed to issue a one-to-one backed crypto asset. So every dollar under the Genius Act, or a genius compliant dollar, if you will, is one-to-one backed with a real dollar. There is no problem to worry about here, right? If we don't close this loophole, it could cause massive problems resulting in losses by retail crypto holders and a bailout of big crypto or a financial crisis. What crisis? There's one-to-one backing. This is safer than the rehypothecated dollars in your bank account. Now, your bank account has FDIC guardrails. So if we're looking and concerned about a bailout, well, the FDIC coverage is actually a bigger bailout from taxpayers to the banking infrastructure. There is no risk of a one-to-one dollar default because, hey, what's going to happen? The dollars disappear. That's outside of the Genius Act compliance. This is not how this is happening. All of the issuers are coming out with direct regulation from the government. So it's a bit of a mania what's going on here. And in the end, it's just kind of funny. They just go on to fearmonger in these completely crazy ways. Finally, it should be made expressly clear that no one will be bailed out if crypto implodes. Like, yes, and what are we talking about with crypto? They use crypto in this weird way. It's cryptographically secured assets on a blockchain. It is the protocols that utilize these. Are we talking about Bitcoin? That's a cryptocurrency. USDC, USDT, these are not cryptocurrencies. They are simply metadata representations of a real dollar being reflected on chain. They are not cryptographically secured in the way that Bitcoin is because they're not self-sovereign. Any one of these issuers can actually revoke a stablecoin directly from your wallet. So if I go ahead and I try to use this for nefarious international evil or something to that effect, they can track that on chain. They can actually freeze my dollars and they can rescind them. This has happened many, many times. So what we can take away here is that the banks are indeed afraid that they're seeing that this yield can be shared via alterations to rewards. And let's be real, as retail holders of these USDC, USDT stable assets, we should want that yield. If they're taking our dollar and they're going and they're buying T-bills for like what, 2 to 4% yield or whatever, why is the company managing that dollar purchase getting that reward? It should flow back to the liquidity providers. Keep in mind, we could protocolize this so you don't actually need that middleman company capturing that money. This is where the protocols are doing a great job. Again, I covered it in Stablecoin Week at finding alternative ways to offer that yield. And in this way, the banks are so screwed and they are scared because coming to competition in this market is so against them. The benefits of the technological scaling, of the capacity to rely on this global public ledger to do the work that used to be handled by cadres of middlemen, of people that required licensure, because again, the risk management used to happen in the intermediaries. You needed all of these people to gain all of these licenses so that we could manage that risk so that, again, the banks didn't steal your money and just do crazy crackhead things with it. Real high risk plays that don't benefit their holders. Now, conversely, in the crypto landscape, you can open that code. These things are open source. You can look at the impacts of if I give you $1, what happens with that dollar? It is a machine that operates this. It cannot go out on its own and do something out of compliance or out of its pre-programmed activity. So this is simply put so much more scalable, so effective at cost savings, and so beneficial to the user side, the retail holder, but it absolutely demolishes tons and tons and tons of banking jobs. In this way, crypto plus AI is an absolute threat to the entire structure upon which they're built. And I've said it many times on this podcast, but it's also showing us that these sub 20 person companies can handle billion-dollar scale. And that's because it's the protocols that are doing the scale. And to do billion-dollar scale at a bank, I mean, that's thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. So they're coming out and they're showing their colors here by spreading falsehoods. And that is largely why I put on this podcast and talk about things. Now, one thing that is not crypto related, but I do want to cover because it's kind of fascinating and it comes back to the digitization of all things, Gen Z in Nepal. For anyone who doesn't know, the Nepalese Communist Party, their parliament was lit on fire earlier this week. And that is because they came out and they denounced social media. They said, we are going to outlaw social media in Nepal. They were immediately marched upon by their populace, causing a complete and total revolution. The communist flag being taken down, the parliament burning. And what we are seeing now is that Gen Z in Nepal are using Discord to decide their country's future. This just reminds me so much of crypto, the way we've been practicing governance over corporate governance. But the obvious end goal has been a network state, a sovereign state with actual capital that has no physical geography, that is connected through the sinews of the internet, with participation being anyone that holds or wants to hold sovereign wealth. And maybe some of these digital corporations build under that regime and so on and so forth. But we're seeing this happen now in traditional discourse around a very real country, Nepal. So it's quite fascinating just to watch how this is unfolding and just how much the future generations are digitally native. That is kind of the core of why I bring this up, which is how can these banks expect the kids to go into a bank and open an account and permit their money to be rehypothecated and not want to use crypto when they're actually in Discord deciding the very fate of their future governments? The organic nature of the digital native future is to be on their phones, it is to be online, it is to be on chain. This is exciting. It's all kind of coming together so perfectly. And as I did with my stablecoins week presentation, I mean, just because the Genius Act doesn't allow the issuers to share yield does not mean the protocols can't. And it is these protocols that are enabling all the power, all of the growth here, and it's truly exciting and disruptive times. With that being said, I hope you enjoy the bull market, at least for today. Don't over lever because we don't know what tomorrow brings. Stay safe and give me a subscription and a like. I would adore it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.